What is up, Ravens Flock? Huge shout out for your support for the 410 Sports Talk. James and Glenn are the best in the business. They're killing it right now. They love talking Raven talk. Make sure you go subscribe to their channel. Let's go Ravens. Big trust.
Welcome in, everybody, to another episode of 410 Sports Talk. I'm James Haskell, along with my co-host and faithful compadre, Glenn Martin. And tonight we're here to talk about something I think is really important and relatively under-discussed here in Baltimore, and that is the run game. It's funny. You'd think about the run game when it comes to the Baltimore Ravens, and you think, well, what's there to discuss? If Greg Roman is going to be our offensive coordinator, they're going to be the best in the league. But I think there's more nuance than that, and John spoke to that point in his presser. So we're going to talk about that in this episode. But before we get into all that, make sure you do a few things. Take a second, hit the subscribe button, turn on your notifications so you stay up to date with the Ravens news. Of course, all the press conferences going on, you want to be up to date. And so you stay up to date with our awesome guests that we're going to be having on. In addition to that, give us a thumbs up if you like the video and leave all your comments below. But Glenn, based on kind of what I mentioned at the beginning, last year seemed to be a little bit of a facade, and John spoke to that. So what's the idea here that we're talking about when it comes to this run game? Because outside looking in, there's no problems. There's nothing to discuss. But when you take you take the lid off and you kind of expose it to light, what's going on there?
Yeah, so you're 100% right. I think if let's say a Minnesota Vikings fan were to see this video and then they just pull up the stats for the Ravens, they go, what are these guys? What are these jokers complaining about or even discussing? They're third in the league in rushing. And if you're complaining about a top 3 rush attack, then, that's more of a you problem. But
yeah.
But when you really think about it, the vast majority of their successful runs, their chunk runs, were off of pass plays. They were off of designed pass plays that were scramble yards from Lamar Jackson or Tyler Huntley. They were not designed run plays where, in the last couple of years, like John mentioned, I mean, he said it himself, it was historic. It wasn't great. It was historically great the last 2 years, the best that the league has ever seen. And so the expectation is obviously very high. And so, when we take that into account, there's no denying that when the quarterback wasn't the one handling the ball and running with the ball, it was a lack of explosiveness. It was a lack of consistency. I mean, we saw more negative rushing plays this season for sure than the last 2 seasons combined. And I don't think it's even that close. And so we understand there's a lot of factors, but the one big factor that was missing, of course, this year was their number 1 and number 2 running backs. And really, quite frankly, they're both interchangeable. Whoever you really want to put at number 1, I think you certainly have a leg to stand on. And that's Gus Edwards and K Dobbins, who were lost right before the season kicked off.
And does it matter that Justice Hill was also gone? I mean, does that really matter?
No, that's why I didn't even bring it up. Yeah. I mean, I might mention it when I'm like really down and trying to defend why it happened. I'll bring him up, but in reality,
and don't forget Justice Hill.
Yeah, exactly. But in reality, zero impact on the season. But even with the fact that Freeman came in and played at a respectable level, I guess considering, it still was a massive drop off. So the question really is that we're talking about here is the return of K Dobbins and Gus Edwards enough? And of course, Lamar Jackson, but we did have Lamar for the first 12 weeks, and it still wasn't the same run attack.
Lamar was the entire running attack.
He was everything, and he was but by the way, I think they were number 1 at that point, but that's all because of Lamar Jackson. It had nothing to do with the running backs, and even the schemed run plays that are, again, historic. And John Harbaugh said himself, the schemed run plays just weren't effective like they were in the previous years, and not even close. So, Jimmy, in your opinion, is the return of K Dobbins and Gus Edwards going to be enough to reignite this rush attack, at least from a running back standpoint?
Man, I think it's funny that you kick it to me first because I think I've been going back and forth. I knew we were going to do this show today, so I've been going back and forth in my mind because part of me thinks of, for example, I'm trying not to get too long-winded here, but Greg Roman has been able to produce a run game in any offense he's been in, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you can kind of plug and play, and he's gonna produce run yards with the running backs in the backfield.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got to give him the benefit of the doubt there, because it's not like he's just done it here. It's not like he's just done it with Lamar, right? He's done it in a multitude of teams. Kind of like, I mean, Kubiak made so many undrafted guys so much money, right? But because of the scheme, you know what I mean? It was the execution of the scheme. Now, players have to execute, but his scheme was good, and he'd draw up his plays, and he knew who his players were, and he would get the most out of them. So I'm going to say no, it's not enough. Not because those guys aren't good enough, but because it's not the focal point of the run game. I think the focal point of that run game is the healthy, imposing offensive line.
Mm-hmm.
And so while absolutely Gus and JK would have made a world of a difference this year, I think ultimately what it comes down to are the guys that are in front of them, and the versatility that they have, the power that they have, the execution that they have. I mean, you think of 19, think about all the versatility we have. People like poo-poo Hayden Hurst in his passing game, but we've heard it from a few analysts. His ability to block at 3 levels is crucial, right? Obviously, Patrick Ricard, Ronnie being out. So,
and he hit our top speed on the team that year.
Exactly. So, yeah, Hayden Hurst, not Ronnie.
Right. No.
yeah, not Ronnie. No. But so my answer is no, those two alone isn't enough to fix the run problems. I think what fixes it is a healthy offensive line. And I think without it, while I'll be less concerned because those two can do a lot, I would still be concerned.
Yeah. I guess the question really is, how much better will they make it? Because we both agree they'll make it a lot better, right? Right.
But I don't think they would be like 2019 or even 20 without the line in front of them.
Yeah, I mean, and I 100% agree. I think that this team, they were really decimated at the offensive line, and that affected every part of this offense. So my whole thing is this. I mean, I look at the numbers, and Devontae Freeman averaged 4.3 a carry, and Latavius Murray averaged 4.2 a carry. Not horrendous, right? Not numbers that you would be like, oh, he's garbage. I mean, even in the year in 2019, when we had the single greatest running attack ever, Justice Hill averaged 3.9 a carry, and I still got people coming at me when I said the guy was garbage and needs to be off the team. So at 4.3 on a decimated line, I guess you kind of got to say, well, it wasn't so bad for Devonta. So if Devonta Freeman can get 4.3 yards per carry behind that line, what can K Dobbins get behind that same offensive line? So I know that they'll be better, but I think you're 100% right. If you want to get back to that, there were scenarios where we were 3rd and 5, 3rd and 6, and we were running the ball.
I swear, 3rd and 8, and we're handing off and we're feeling good about
it. So if we want to get back to that, then it's got to be the combination of the two. It's got to be Ronnie healthy. It's got to be, a second year and growth from Ben Cleveland at left guard. It's got to be Zeitler playing pretty much the same way he played this year. I don't think you can expect much more from a guy his age, but I don't think you need much more from what he did. And then you got to figure out the right tackle position in a big way. I mean, as much as Macari was admirable at right tackle, I don't think you want to pencil him in as your everyday starter. I don't think John wants to do that either. So I think you got to fix that. And Juwan James may be the answer, may not. We really don't know about that yet. And obviously the question marks surrounding Bradley Bozeman at center are big ones. But I think that those two back alone, it's crazy to even think of this because we're talking about the 3rd-ranked run attack, but it's just so deceiving. I think those two alone, and of course in combination with what Lamar is going to bring when he's back, make a big, big difference. But if you want to get close to those historical rates, you got to have improvements up front.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, yeah, there's a little nuance to the question there, the way that you phrased it. So, yeah, certainly they will be better, right? Like their ability to make guys miss or just to run through them, to break their will, right? Like,
I mean, how many times did we even see one of our running backs make a guy miss in the open field?
Yeah, because another interesting stat from John, which is where JK and Gus will make a dramatic impact, even if the offensive line stays put, right? Like even if they are as good as they were this year, next year, is we were number 1 in the league, if I'm not mistaken, in yards until contact, in the running game, but we were at the bottom end of the league at yards after contact.
Wow, interesting.
So with that being said, I mean, if you think about what Gus does after contact, I mean, after contact, he's like guaranteed another 4 yards based on his career statistics.
You know what? I'm so glad that you brought that up, Jimbo, because you are so right about that. I mean, wow, I didn't know that we were that good as far as before contact. I didn't know we were number one before
Right.
contact. Now, if we take the quarterback out of that, it's still heavily, the quarterback is heavily influencing that number as
Sure.
well. But you can't just discredit it and say, well, it's all the quarterback. I think that
Yeah, because
says
we broke
something.
some big ones. Like, think about even the Steelers game. I mean, Latavius Murray, I swear, wasn't touched until he was like 18 yards down the field multiple times. That's just one game, right? So we had some big ones where certainly it was great, schemed up run play, right?
Absolutely. But here's the one that I'm glad you pointed out that made me look more into it. I looked at some of the advanced statistics surrounding the Ravens. Devontae Freeman this year averaged, let's see, 1.5 yards after contact per attempt.
Right.
So 1.5. The year before, JK averaged 2.9.
Right. Do they have an average for Gus?
2.7. So you're talking nearly doubling
Yeah.
what the guy 1.5 to 2.7 or 2.9.
And I swear 1 year Gus was at like 3.5.
Oh, I'm sure. I mean, if I looked up Gus's
Like throughout his career so far. So I mean,
probably like the
dramatic
19
difference.
season.
So I mean, while I focus on the offensive line, that stat alone also shows you, like you said, there will be a dramatic improvement in that run game with just those two coming back.
He was at 2.8, by the way, in 19. So 2.8, 2.7. I mean, you can see very consistent. And then you see 1.5. That's every time, Jimbo, you're talking 1.5 yards more every time. Like, that's not insane. A little bit. That's a monster amount when you're talking about a game of inches, in the NFL. So, man, I mean, I tell you, even looking at Mark Ingram in 2019, guy had 18 broken tackles that season, which is insane. Like, that's insane. I mean, that's not that's making guys just shedding guys who have a hold of you.
Right.
So I think when you pointed out like that it's the extra stuff that they bring. It's like you say, Gus always falls forward. He doesn't fall backwards like a lot of these guys do. And when you're talking about a game that comes down to, where they're bringing the sticks out and they got a camera and they're looking and it's like down to this. I mean, you're talking 5 feet each time of a difference. That's a massive improvement. So, I think that they'll make a huge difference. But of course, to get back to the 2019 numbers, it's going to take both.
So let's I have this final question for the show. I mean, I think so to encapsulate it, to get back to where we want to be, I think, like you said, we need a combination of both, but vastly improved if JK and Gus, they come back in healthy and they're healthy, right? Vastly improved. I mean, but this is the question. They come back, they're healthy, and our offense, Ronnie comes back healthy. We don't know what's going on at right tackle, but say Ronnie comes back healthy and we have a left guard, Bozeman signs, and we have Zeitler, but we still know what's going on with the right tackle. Where's your confidence level to where this running game can be? Like, best case scenario 19, right? Like 2019, worst case scenario being worse than this year, right? Like where's your confidence level that we can be that good again? Or is that one of those things that was like a flash in the pan? Right, and we're not going to.
Yeah, I mean, to get back to historic greatest of all time is probably asking a little bit too much. But if you're telling me Ronnie Stanley, if you could guarantee me a healthy Ronnie Stanley for a whole season, I mean, for number one in the league for sure is the ceiling. And now historically, maybe not getting to 19's figures, but still number one in the league and feeling good about a 3rd and 4 run attempt. Good is how good they could be, because Macari, while you don't want him to be in, if he had to be, he was more than serviceable. I'd say he was, at least slightly above average. And so if you're telling me that that's your weakest guy, because I think Bradley's better than that, I think Zeitler's definitely better than that, and obviously Ronnie's an all-pro. Well, I guess so. Then you got to wonder what type of growth is from Ben Cleveland, but I'm pretty confident in his sophomore growth.
Yeah,
I think you could be number one in the league for sure, and it's not all going to be due to Lamar Jackson. It's always going to be influenced by Lamar, but it won't be like
the catalyst always.
Right, but it won't be like this year where you're like take Lamar or Huntley away, and their running game is trash. It won't be that for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see. Guys, let us know what you think. Do you think that Gus and JK are enough? Do you think that it needs to be like, you need to go the atomic route and it's Greg Roman? Maybe they've figured out his play calling. Maybe, there isn't enough, what does he call it? Deception. There you go. Within his play calling anymore. Let us know all your thoughts on below in the comments on the run game if JK and Gus are enough. And we'll talk to you guys soon.